They teach you how to fight with your hands, but no one teaches you how to fight with your silence. And that is why most people lose before the battle even begins. From a young age, you were told that strength is loud. That power looks aggressive. That winning means overpowering someone in front of everyone else. But the world does not reward those who react. It rewards those who control. The truth most people never accept is simple and uncomfortable. The real battle is never physical. It never was. Every conflict you face, every rivalry, every betrayal, every enemy starts in the mind. Long before words are spoken, long before actions are taken, and long before anyone admits there is a fight at all. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He saw that people are not ruled by logic, but by emotion, fear, pride, ego, and insecurity. Whoever controls these forces controls the person. Your enemy does not need to defeat you. They only need you to doubt yourself. Because once doubt enters your mind, you begin fighting yourself for them. Think about it. How many times have you replayed a moment in your head? A comment, a look, a silence. How many nights have you lost sleep over someone who barely remembers your name? That is mental defeat. The enemy who angers you already owns a piece of you. The enemy who scares you controls your decisions. And the enemy who makes you explain yourself has placed you on defense. This is the trap. Most people believe reacting proves strength, but reaction is exposure. It reveals where you are weak. It shows where you can be touched. Machiavelli warned that men lose power the moment they reveal their emotions. Because emotions are maps. They show others where to strike. History is filled with proof. Empires did not fall because they ran out of soldiers. They fell because leaders panicked. They reacted too quickly. They trusted the wrong voices. They made decisions from fear instead of control. The Roman generals knew this. Before battles, they spread rumors of their own strength. They exaggerated their numbers. They allowed the enemy's imagination to do the damage. By the time swords met, the enemy was already exhausted, mentally broken. No blood was needed to plant fear, only perception. And perception is everything. In your life, the same law applies. The person who stays calm when others are emotional becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability creates fear. When you do not respond the way people expect, they feel unsettled. When you remain quiet, where they expected anger, their confidence cracks. When you do not explain yourself, they assume you know something they don't. Silence becomes pressure. This is why the strongest people often say the least. They do not rush to prove themselves. They do not defend every rumor. They do not react to every insult. They understand something dangerous. Attention is fuel. If you give your enemy attention, they grow. If you give them emotion, they feed. If you give them explanation, they gain leverage. So you stop. You stop reacting. You stop justifying. You stop performing for people who benefit from your emotional exposure. This is not weakness. This is discipline. Most people cannot do this. Their ego demands response. Their pride demands defense. Their fear demands reassurance. But the moment you control those urges, you shift the balance of power. Now your enemy is guessing. Now they are watching closely. Now they are unsure. And uncertainty eats at the mind. They wonder if they miscalculated you. They replay their words. They question their move. They start looking for threats that may not exist. You did nothing. Yet they are spiraling. This is the awakening. You realize that battles are won by the one who can stay centered while others lose control. You realize that power is quiet, that dominance is emotional restraint, that the calm mind sees clearly while the emotional mind makes mistakes. Machiavelli once implied a truth few dare to live by. It is safer to be unreadable than understood. Because when people cannot read you, they cannot control you. And once you understand this, the game changes. You no longer seek to defeat your enemies loudly. You let them defeat themselves. The real fight is not against them. It never was. It is against your need to react, your need to be seen, your need to defend your ego. Master that, and you become untouchable. The battle begins the moment you stop reacting. Control your emotions, and you control the narrative. Because the enemy you confuse is already losing, even if they don't know it yet. Once you stop reacting, something strange happens. The noise around you begins to fade. And in that silence, you start to see clearly not just yourself, but your enemy too. This is where the descent begins. Not into violence, not into chaos, but into the darker layers of the human mind. Because when an enemy can no longer read you, they turn inward. They start questioning their own moves, their own strength, their own worth. And doubt, once planted, does not need your help to grow. Machiavelli understood that people fear uncertainty more than pain. Pain is sharp, but it ends. Uncertainty lingers. It keeps the mind awake at night. When someone does not know where they stand with you, their imagination becomes their worst enemy. They fill the silence with fear. They replay past moments, searching for meaning that may not exist. They ask themselves questions with no answers. Did I go too far? Do they know something I don't? Am I losing control? These questions eat at them slowly. You see, most people expect resistance. They expect arguments. They expect anger. When they don't get it, they feel exposed. Silence becomes a mirror. And many people do not like what they see. This is why subtle actions are more powerful than loud ones. A calm reply instead of a heated response. A delayed answer instead of instant attention. A quiet withdrawal instead of confrontation. Each one sends the same message without words. I am not shaken. History shows us this again and again. Spies did not destroy nations by force. They whispered doubt into trusted ears. They questioned loyalty. They planted small uncertainties. And soon, leaders turned against each other. Friends became suspicious. Power collapsed from the inside. No army needed. In your own life, the same rule applies. When you stop correcting every lie told about you, people wonder why. When you stop defending your name, others start questioning the attacker instead. When you stop chasing approval, your absence becomes loud. Indifference is not weakness, it is controlled power. An enemy who cannot provoke you feels small. An enemy who cannot read you feels blind. And an enemy who cannot predict you feels unsafe. This is where overconfidence turns into collapse. Machiavelli believed it was wise to let your enemy believe they were winning, just long enough to lower their guard. Because when people feel secure, they become careless. They speak too freely. They reveal too much. They make mistakes they cannot undo. Meanwhile, you watch. You learn. You wait. You do not rush this process. Doubt works best when it feels natural, when it feels self-made. If you push too hard, they resist. If you stay calm, they unravel. They begin acting out, sending messages that sound confident but feel desperate, making bold moves to prove strength, raising their voice to hide insecurity. You stay quiet. That contrast is devastating, because the mind wants balance. When one side is calm and the other is emotional, the emotional side feels wrong, unstable, out of control. And control is everything. There is a moment, small, almost invisible, when the enemy stops seeing you as the problem and starts seeing themselves as the problem. That is the turning point. They replay conversations. They regret words. They imagine threats that are not there. Their focus leaves you. Their energy turns inward. You are no longer fighting them. They are fighting themselves. At this stage, many people make a mistake. They strike too early. They reveal satisfaction. They break silence to claim victory. Do not. Victory announced too soon becomes vulnerability. True power does not rush to be seen. It waits. It lets the collapse finish. You continue building your life. Your discipline sharpens. Your routine strengthens. Your confidence becomes quiet and grounded. This growth creates distance. And distance weakens influence. The enemy sees you moving forward while they remain stuck. They feel left behind, irrelevant. And nothing breaks a person faster than feeling unnecessary. You never insulted them. You never attacked them. You simply removed yourself from the emotional game. And now they are trapped in it alone. This is the descent. Not into cruelty, but into truth. The truth that power does not need to prove itself. It simply exists. Doubt does not need force. It only needs space. When you stop feeding conflict, it feeds on itself. And when someone begins fighting their own mind, you are already beyond their reach. Doubt is more destructive than opposition. When an enemy begins fighting themselves, you are already free. You do not need to attack what is already collapsing. And freedom is the greatest power a man can possess. There comes a point when the enemy stops being the focus, not because they disappeared, but because they no longer matter. This is the final stage most people never reach. Not revenge, not domination, but mastery. By now, you have learned silence. You have learned restraint. You have watched doubt do its quiet work. And something has changed inside you. You no longer feel the urge to react. The words that once burned now fall flat. The threats that once caused fear now sound hollow. This is not numbness. This is clarity. Machiavelli admired one thing above all else: control. Not control over others, but control over the self. Because the man who controls himself cannot be owned. Most people are predictable. They react when insulted. They chase validation. They defend their ego like it is their identity. You no longer do. And that alone makes you dangerous. When you stop needing approval, manipulation fails. When you stop fearing loss, threats lose power. When you stop explaining yourself, others lose leverage. You begin to move differently. You speak less. You listen more. You choose carefully where your energy goes. This is where enemies grow uncomfortable. They cannot read you anymore. Your silence no longer feels empty. It feels intentional. Your calm feels heavier than their noise. They try one last time, a provocation, a rumor, a final attempt to pull you back into the emotional storm. You do not step in, and that moment breaks something in them. Because the greatest fear is not being hated, it is being irrelevant. You see, mental warfare ends when you stop needing to win, when your life moves forward regardless of their presence, when their actions no longer shape your choices. This is the paradox Machiavelli never stated plainly but lived by. The strongest position is not attack, it is independence. You build discipline, not for display, but for stability. You wake up with purpose. You train your body, you sharpen your mind. You keep promises to yourself, and slowly, quietly, your confidence becomes rooted. Not loud, not fragile, but unshakable. Enemies sense this. They notice that you no longer compete, you no longer explain delays. You no longer rush to respond. You have become hard to reach. And what cannot be reached cannot be controlled. This is why the most powerful people often seem distant. Not arrogant, not cold, just selective. They understand that attention is currency, and not everyone deserves access. Your enemy begins to realize something painful. They were fighting a version of you that no longer exists. While they stayed focused on the past, you evolved. While they waited for reaction, you moved on. While they held resentment, you built peace. This is the final defeat, not humiliation, not destruction, but disappearance from your emotional world. Machiavelli believed that public victories create private enemies, but quiet growth leaves nothing to attack. You do not celebrate their fall. You do not mock their mistakes. You do not claim moral high ground. You simply continue. And that is what haunts them, because deep down, they know the truth. They did not lose because you were cruel. They lost because you were disciplined. They lost because you mastered yourself. This mastery does not make you heartless. It makes you precise. You still feel. You still care. But you choose where those feelings belong. You no longer hand your emotions to people who would use them against you. You no longer bleed in rooms that profit from your pain. You protect your inner world, and in doing so, you become untouchable. This is the highest form of power, not dominance, not control, but sovereignty. You own your reactions. You own your focus. You own your future. And anyone who tries to disturb that peace reveals their weakness, not yours. There is nothing left to prove, nothing left to defend. When you master your mind, the world loses its grip on you, and the enemy, once so loud, fades into silence. Because the most powerful man is not the one who wins every fight, but the one who no longer needs to fight at all. Break your enemies by mastering yourself. Control your mind, and no one can control your fate. True power is emotional independence, not domination. Because the most dangerous man is not the one who fights, but the one who cannot be shaken.